Do you actually have to be on cocaine to be on this podcast?
It's a great day to be a Wildcat!
Cocaine?
Durfing?
What is up, everybody? You're listening to yet another edition of Cocaine Willie. I am your commissioner, Bob Trollsby, and we are the K-State representative on the College Huddle. As always, I'm joined by one of my co-hosts, the good chef Andre Napier, as Fireball Matt Marchesini is somewhere overseas. I won't tell you where, but if you know, you know. It's a place where hair plugs are prevalent, but that's not why he's there. Tonight, we are joined by the Ryan and Rush Show, which is the College Huddle's West Virginia representative as well. They will be joining us to help preview the matchup this weekend in Morgantown between the 17th ranked Wildcats and a 3-3 but very scrappy West Virginia team. We will find out whether or not these guys are hashtag climb trusters or not. But before we dive into the episode, we first want to give a shout out to our two sponsors, Annie Mae's Parlor and Pat's Beef Jerky. This beer crack is brought to you by Annie Mae's Parlor, located at 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville in Manhattan, Kansas. Annie Mae's has been in business for 50 years, as you can see from my koozie right there, and is an absolute must-visit destination in Aggieville on game days and school nights alike. Annie Mae's is far and away my favorite destination in Aggieville, and I always make a point to go visit my auntie every time I come back to the Little Apple. They feature a wide variety of craft cocktails, draft beers, and everything in between, along with entertainment like live music, comedy, and all sorts of other events every single week. So check out their website, www.anniemays.com, to get a list of their upcoming events, including next Tuesday. They will be having Jesus Christ Taxi Driver performing at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Obviously, they're doing tons of cool stuff there all the time. So check out the website. Go visit your auntie in MHK at 616 North 12th Street, and be sure to tell them Cocaine Willie sent you. The show is also brought to you by Pat's Beef Jerky, located at 401 Main Street in Liebenthal, Kansas. Guys, I was at this Colorado game that happened last weekend, and I was with some folks from La Crosse, Kansas, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump about, 15, 20-minute drive maybe from Liebenthal, and all they could talk about was raving about Pat's Beef Jerky. And they have been serving up mouthwatering flavors like their classic beef jerky, teriyaki beef jerky, and my personal favorite, the savory beef pepper sticks, for 34 years running. So there's 3 places where you can get your Pat's Beef Jerky. You can pick it up in person at the Fridge Liquor Store in Manhattan, Kansas. At their original store, you can also pick up Pat's Beef Jerky at 401 Main Street in Liebenthal, Kansas. And last but not least, you can get your Pat's Beef Jerky online via snail mail. Represent Chef Andre Napier, snail mail carrier himself. And Pat's has shipped to all 50 of the great United States. So you can order it online at www.patsbeefjerky.com. Make sure you use the promo code CATS for 10% off of your next order as well. So use the promo code, get that Pat's Beef Jerky, get it shipped to West Virginia if you're a mountaineer listening to this somewhere else, and visit www.patsbeefjerky to place your order today. All right, we've got Rush, we've got Ryan. How are you guys feeling right now, I guess, first and foremost? And I guess before we get into the pod, I do want to give you guys an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about your history as West Virginia fans, your history with the program. Ryan, I know that you were involved with Bob Huggins, who's very near and dear and familiar with a lot of K-State fans and alums ourselves. But just give us kind of the rundown of how you all got into this and where your love for West Virginia athletics comes from.
Well, thanks, guys, for having us. I love Manhattan. I love Aggieville. So one of my favorite college towns, especially in the Big 12. But yeah, I mean, I grew up a Mountaineer fan. I grew up in Virginia Rush, and I did. I had family that went to West Virginia, and then I got into college coaching in 2012 and started as a manager, then to a GA, worked for Frank Martin, another famous K-Stater. Hopped on his staff 2017 as a GA. We went to the Final Four, as everybody remembers. Then I came back home to West Virginia to finish as the video coordinator for Bob Huggins. And then 2022, I was ready for change. As everybody knows, the coaching industry, college athletics has changed, the NIL portal and all the different moving pieces. So I said, let's start up a show here and start talking about the Mountaineers. And here we are. So worn a lot of different hats in terms of the Mountaineers, but definitely bleed blue and gold and want the Mountaineers to win every Saturday.
So my story's a little different. I actually was born out in Provo, Utah. And you don't hear a lot of people that were raised Mormon and converted to being West Virginia fans. But that's how it happened. As Ryan said, grew up in Northern Virginia. So I was born out in Provo. Dad gets a job out in D.C., so grow up in Northern Virginia. And I, unlike Ryan, accidentally went to West Virginia. I transferred here back in 2015. Like to this day, I Country Roads Take Me Home's the perfect song. Mountain Mama she called me. And my dad had a conference out here at one time, and he's like, I know you're looking for a new school. You know, West Virginia's not bad. Maybe you should check it out. I found out Christmas Day of 2014. I got accepted a week later. Never been here before. I only knew Ryan, obviously, because we grew up together. And as they say in the song, in the morning she called me. So I took off to almost heaven. It was the second greatest decision in my life I've ever made. Obviously, the first being marrying my wife, where we ended up, I graduate school, go back to Northern Virginia for a bit, come back out to West Virginia. Pandemic, my girlfriend at the time was working at the hospital here, moved back out here a second time. Obviously, Ryan and I, linked back up, started the show. I'm still out in Morgantown now. Absolutely love West Virginia. Call myself a converted West Virginian. But it's definitely crazy going from like the squeaky clean school of BYU, that one side of the Big 12, to Party Central West Virginia, but wouldn't have it any other way. So proud to live here in Morgantown and be part of West Virginia. And sometimes the comments call us fair weather fans, but that is not the case at all. I swear. If I was a fair weather fan of something, I'd be probably cheering for another team. I wouldn't be dealing with this heartbreak week in and week out, but I wouldn't want it any other way. Absolutely love Morgantown and love what we do over at the Ryan and Rush Show.
You guys are one of my favorite. I mean, I fanboyed on you guys last time that I was on your podcast, so I'm not going to do that this time. But I do want to talk West Virginia and a little bit of the big picture. This is going to be the setup to the Neil Brown breakdown. Neil Brown, year 6, same as the Chris Kleiman era. They're running together. I remember him being a finalist for Kansas State and, really wanting him real bad. And ever since he's been at West Virginia, I've been kind of hoping that he would get out of the door, because I feel like if he ever really got his foot in the door and really got it going, he'd be a problem to deal with. Kansas State, 2 straight years beating West Virginia. We didn't play last year, but 2 straight appearances where we won. But last year was one of those surprise years. 9-4, got Mayo dumped on his head at the end of the year. Always love seeing that. And I kind of want to get the temperature check from you guys, because after a 9-4 season, the expectations were a little high, but you're 3-3 now. Where are you guys at with this? The university, give me from the top down, what's going to happen and where are you guys at right now?
Wow. Right into it. It's man. So the Neil Brown era, like you said, 34-32, 22-25. And all you got to do is just look to your guys' coach. It's the exact same time period, same year taking over. One has a Big 12 championship. The other one has a 9-win outlier season. You guys have won 8+ games 3 straight years. Probably on your way to another one. Us, on the other hand, it looks like we're kind of taking a little bit of a step back from our 9-win season, unfortunately. The temperature is very hot, to be point blank. It's and he didn't do himself any favors earlier in the week when he was asked a question about why fans should come out to play you guys this weekend, and he responded it was fun or something about the weather being warm. I've blacked out whatever the quote is. It really, as many know, the comment pissed me off because I've worked in that athletics department. I talked about my background. Like I've coached at West Virginia. I've been a student at West Virginia. I do a show in West Virginia. I'm passionate. I want the Mountaineers to win. And our fan base is the exact same way, or at least 95% of them, where they live and breathe every single second of West Virginia. There's no professional sports teams in the state of West Virginia. The Mountaineers are it. And it's not one of the most wealthy states in America. People save up dollars that they probably don't even have so that they can pull off and go to a game every Saturday and watch those 5 to 6 Mountaineer games. And for him to say what he said was just so out of touch with reality of, no, we're not having fun. We like to win. Like we expect to go to the game and win. Yeah, tailgating's fun. Yeah, the weather being warm is nice, but it's all a build-up so that you go to a game to win. So the temperature is very hot. This is a big game for him this Saturday. He's not going to get a lot of people back. I'm not one of those people that I'm just burying him right away, but he needs to start winning some of these bigger games. He's 3-16 as well against ranked opponents in his 6 years. So that's a little bit of a nutshell. Get a little bit off my chest. Rush, I'll let you tell your side of the story with Neil.
Yeah, that 3-16 is those three teams. We're talking about a Virginia Tech. I think one of those was a Kansas State at one time and an Iowa State. All finished within 500, so they weren't even ranked by the end of the season. I think the Neil Brown era is defined by just lack of consistency. This really, and it was a deeper issue with our previous athletic director, Shane Lyons. And what's tough, and you guys may know this well, is you know, whether it's a former athletic director, it's Neil Brown itself, or on our show earlier today, where you kind of have to talk about a little bit of a quarterback controversy. Personally, we really all like these guys, and we really have no problems with them, and we wish them all the best. But this is also a business, and we have to tell the things that we see from our side. So before Monday's press conference comments, let's just take a step back for a second. I think a lot of us felt like after that Iowa State game, and on a micro level, I personally do not blame Neil Brown for that loss. I kind of consider it, you know, we had a center that was struggling. You know, Garrett Green just wasn't himself, and we haven't really seen the true Garrett Green this year. I know we'll get into that in a little bit. And just, you know, the defense wasn't bad, but there was a play with a blown coverage. You got a missed field goal. I personally blame the players more for that game than I do the coaching. I felt our coaches put them in a position to win, and they didn't execute. The problem is, on a macro level scale, it's just another game in the Neil Brown era that just is, we lose it. And I think that's the issue. And I think after that game, it's okay, whoever's the blame here, that's one thing, but we're just tired of this endless cycle where we're beating bad teams, we're losing to good teams, and we're end up somewhere in the middle. We know the passion behind the state. We know what we're capable of, and we need something different. It's time for a change. However, at the end of this year, he does have a $9.5 million buyout. The question then remains, do you keep him around another year knowing that, hey, in the NIL era, you know, you got a new coach in here, and you would have to pay for new football coaches. Resources have to be distributed correctly, especially in an era where you're paying players. Okay, fine. We'll figure it out. The season's still on. Then we get to Monday in the press conference. And when you kind of what Ryan was talking about, when you basically, and maybe he was trying to do a glass half full. Personally, to me, it seemed like a coach that's kind of given up and just got lazy with his answer. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's even a coach trying to get fired because he's just done. He wants a nice little payout. Both sides just need to move on with themselves. And from there, basically a mutiny began, because now you should just see the ticket prices at this game on Sunday. Now look at Ticketmaster. They have fallen. People are done. And now the problem is, okay, how do we distribute resources? But now you may be losing more money than that original $9.5 million. And you can't have these passionate fans turn on you, because then going to the athletic director that we have now, that's how he loses his job. So a decision has to be done. And what's funny about this is Ryan and I like our chances this week. This team could easily go 7-5 and get an 8-win season with a bowl game included. The issue is it may be too little too late. And where I originally started was our previous athletic director extended him in 2020 with a shortened season. We beat Army in a bowl game and other teams were interested in. And I think the lesson that's learned from this is you have to have a coach that has proven himself before you can offer an extension. And I'm not talking about the extension we just did, because that was actually more of a team-friendly extension, but the type of extension that was offered to him back in 2020. And if you lose him to another school, okay, you lose him. It's a risk you have to take. But I think this is the lesson that has been learned at West Virginia, and hopefully other college programs take a note out of this, is you need to prove yourself. You cannot be 11-11 and offering these coaches massive extensions that you keep just hedging yourself. And now we're seeing, unfortunately, the rotten fruits of that. So that's where we stand.
West Virginia fans are nothing if not passionate. That's what I've gathered here, and the whole fair weather fan thing, definitely not the case from what I'm seeing and hearing. And frankly, with my dealings with West Virginia fans the last few years, and on Twitter and stuff, especially after Texas and Oklahoma left the conference and we had that hateful eight situation, West Virginia fans are passionate, and I have tremendous amount of respect for your fan base and everything that you bring to the Big 12. And that's knowing that also prior to the Texas and OU thing, there was a lot of kind of question marks around, like, West Virginia doesn't always really seem like they want to be here. You know, most of their rivals are in the ACC anyway. It never really geographically fit. It was just kind of, hey, this is what's available. This is what we need to take. Missouri and Texas A&M are gone. Let's go after TCU and West Virginia. But I mean, I think culturally West Virginia is all Big 12 all the time. It makes sense to me. And frankly, getting into the offense here, West Virginia for a long time in the 2010s was known as similar to a lot of those other Big 12 schools at the time, kind of that air raid. Dana Holgerson comes in. Graham Harrell also comes in after that and continues that legacy of that air raid offense. And now you have a guy who's more of a dual threat. And I think you're passing the ball 40% of the time and rushing it 60% of the time. So very different from what I think a lot of K-State fans associate with West Virginia football, at least from our experience being conference mates. But West Virginia right now, currently 36th overall in FBS in offensive efficiency based on EPA per play, ranking 68th in rushing efficiency and 12th overall when dropping back to pass, which was curious to me because all I've been hearing about has been rushed, like this three-headed monster of Garrett Green, Jaheim White, and CJ Donaldson. But all of that is to say, West Virginia's throwing the ball, like I said, 40% of the time, which is in the bottom quarter of FBS teams, kind of right there with K-State as well. Yeah. But the offense is 62nd in the nation. Offensive line is 62nd in the nation in sacks allowed per game, which is not great, but not bad, kind of middle of the pack. But you do have some guys who are talented, some guys that may be playing on Sundays in the future. So I guess I'm just curious offensively, when we look kind of at the big picture here, is the offensive efficiency with that drop back, is that strictly just due to the fact that there's fewer opportunities for them to drop back and pass and you're relying more on that rushing game? And then secondly, schematically, with this being a different type of offense than K-State fans are used to seeing from West Virginia, I guess I'm just curious, how does it differ? Like, what should K-State fans look out for schematically on Saturday in this game, knowing that it's not this air raid thing of the past that we're used to?
Great questions. The first one from your guys' side, I kind of hit me that it was the first time we've kind of played you guys since we have shifted more towards what we traditionally were. We used to be, you think back to the mid-2000s, Rich Rod, Pat White, Steve Slater, with that spread offense that we would run the ball. And then when Dana got here, we started throwing the ball more, kind of that Mike Leach, air it out, receivers everywhere, and Geno Smith, Will Grier in that era. We're more the old school. I think the offensive efficiency through the air is a little bit misleading, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I think it might be a little bit padded in the FCS game as well, just because the volume has not been there as well. Our identity is definitely running the ball, just like you guys. Smash mouth, controlled the line of scrimmage. We got multiple guys averaging 4.5, 5.5 yards a carry, including our quarterback, just like your guys' quarterback. Garrett Green's a dual threat guy, and then we're led by our 1-2 punch out of the backfield, Jaheim White, CJ Donaldson, and then our experienced offensive line. So that's probably what, to rewind, what was frustrating on Saturday is we thought we were going to be able to run the ball more against Iowa State with how banged up they were, and we got a little bit away from it and opened it up, and then we threw some interceptions that were really momentum killers, backbreakers. So, yeah, our identity is definitely running the football.
Yeah, I'd be curious, too, with those stats. I think that's a good point, Ryan. It may be a little misleading with the FCS game, and then also with when you have a dual threat quarterback in Garrett Green, how many times he's gone back to pass, but actually has rushed the ball. So, if I were you guys, I would be just lining up in those A gaps and preventing us from running north-south, because for whatever reason, I think it's something that we're really good at. But the issue with Neil Brown, and this is something he's always struggled with, he knows X's and O's really well. And I think he is a very good offensive mind. I think Neil Brown's ceiling is being what he was, kind of a coach at Troy, similar to Billy Napier at Florida. Probably Louisiana's his ceiling. And there's nothing wrong with that, being a great coach in a mid-major. I mean, better than what the four of us, that's a fantastic. So that's not to talk down, or being an offensive coordinator somewhere and doing well there. So I want to put that straight. But the negative part of that is he has trouble feeling the game. He has a game plan. He has a good script. There's a reason against Iowa State that when we won the coin toss, we elected to receive, and we went down and scored. So my opinion is, if you're going to receive, you better go score. Or if that's not going to happen, you better be getting the ball in the second half. So what does that say? He has a very good script, and he likes to game plan, and that's fine. That's great. But when you get punched in the face, what are you going to do about it? And that's the problem, is the adjustments are the biggest issue. So what you all need to do is our strength is running north-south. And for whatever reason, Neil Brown doesn't like to do it a lot. Be ready to take that on and make Garrett Green throw the ball, because he's going to get frustrated. It's not going to work, or it won't work for one play. And then he'll try to swing Jaheim White out. It'll work sometimes, it won't. And then it's going to be like a 3rd and 6, and just be ready to defend the pass. It's very frustrating, as you can hear in my voice, how we have such a talented team. And I really believe we have a talented team, but just momentum can't be built on one way or another. So play to the strengths of us running the ball, and it will cause disruption.
Well, I mean, you gave us the blueprint, but you got one guy back there that can make a difference, and that's Garrett Green. I really like Garrett Green as a quarterback, to be honest. Coming into this season, I thought he was going to put up some kind of video game numbers, to be honest. But right now he's at 8 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. He's slinging the ball around. Is it 1,600 yards total? He has 382 on the ground rushing. He's a little mobile guy. We haven't seen that from the Kansas State defense so far this season. But you did mention in a video, I mean, maybe a quarterback controversy. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. I'd like for you guys to expand on that and maybe give what you see in Garrett Green, and is he living up to that potential? And then I kind of have a follow-up question to that is kind of off the wall.
So yeah, we did do that. We had that conversation earlier, just because Nico has come in multiple times and looked the part. And to be honest, the comparison I made was Will Howard and Avery Johnson last year, where Will Howard, he didn't suck. I mean, he didn't suck, and Garrett Green has not sucked by any means. But does Avery Johnson give you a higher ceiling? Does Nico Marchiol give you a higher ceiling? And it's a conversation worth having. And Garrett just has not played to the level he played last year. The top 10 PFF quarterback, top 10 advanced analytic, whatever site you wanted to use, he was supposed to be a fringe Heisman Trophy candidate this year. And he just for whatever reason, I don't know who got in his ear. He's forcing the ball downfield. He's forcing it more into tight windows compared to last year where he took his checkdowns more. And I don't know. It feels like he's less or more reluctant to rely on his legs for whatever reason to extend plays, except when we absolutely need it, like at the end of the Kansas game. He just has not. He's played average, or he's played okay compared to last year where he was excellent. I mean, he was off the charts. He single-handedly won us 5-6 games, and that's why we were able to win 9 games. But this year, we have 3 losses to 3 teams that are 6-0. You can't get average quarterback play. When you're playing Rocco Beck and Iowa State in primetime, or Penn State, who's a top 5 team now, and then I guess Pitt, who's 6-0, we just gave them the game at the end. You can't be average. You can't turn the ball over. You can't lose a turnover margin, and that's what we've done in our 3 losses, and that's why we've beat Oklahoma State and Kansas, who are combined 0-6 in Big 12 play, and we beat the FCS, but we lose all the teams that have a little bit of toughness, it seems like.
Yeah, it's a hard conversation because the thing about Nico, like what Ryan was saying, his ceiling is definitely technically higher. He does have dual threat capabilities. He was a 5-star recruit. And when he went in, to the Oklahoma State game when Garrett hurt his shoulder and he had to go out for a little bit, he looked more like the pro style that would translate to the NFL. I'm not calling him the next NFL great. I'm just, what I'm saying. Thing with Garrett is, how do you not love the guy? He's a leader, not only for this football team in the Morgantown community. Like, to even do that episode, it does break your heart a little bit. But Ryan and I talked, and we felt like it was a necessary episode to do. We do believe Garrett hasn't lost the job yet. Ryan is a little more on the, hey, you got to give him one more game. I'm a little more, if he's going out and right away you can tell he's forcing the ball or has a couple 3-and-outs, or what we believe this year is he's trying to do too much. He just needs to be that same Garrett Green we saw last year. And there was a point, we talked about it, where last year we lived and died by Garrett Green, where his pros outweighed his cons, but sometimes those cons, like in the Oklahoma game where he's overthrowing guys and, a little crazy out there, so be it. But hey, he's playing balls to the wall, and you don't hate that. And he just doesn't have that. It's like he's trying to score 35 points on one drive, and you just can't do that. Like, it's like, when a team gets a little bit behind in baseball and one guy tries to hit like an 8-run home run, and it's like, no, you gotta chip away, right? And I think that's the issue. I think he's trying to take on too much. And to his credit, it's because he cares. It's because he wants to go out there and give Mountaineer Nation his all. And we love him for it. But at some point, it's maybe you do have to try something else. And I'm not saying you have to try that something else, and which would be Nico for the rest of the season. And sometimes maybe that would be his wake-up call. But Nico needs to be on standby, to say the least, because it needs to get a little cleaner.
Well, I want to ask this. It's a little off the wall because,
sure,
there's very few West Virginia quarterbacks that I can really remember. And I'm in the modern era that I'm talking because before Pat White, I have no idea. But where does Garrett Green stand on that list, in your opinion?
Well, Greer and Gino, obviously Gino.
Did I say Will Greer just now?
Yeah.
I meant Garrett Green. Give me Garrett Green on that list.
No, you asked about Garrett Green, but
sorry.
Greer lit it up that last year. His second year, first year he was a little bit up and down, and then Gino obviously lit it up for half a year and then tanked in that. But hey, he's still playing.
Yeah,
he's still
forgot
playing.
About Gino.
Yeah, man, he's had a hell of a career. He's still playing for the Seahawks right now, and he's had a heck of an NFL career. He's definitely, from a talent standpoint, I would say Garrett Green's probably 5th or 6th, but just with his gamer and finding a way, the intangibles to win games, I would put him in the top 3 right there with those NFL guys. He reminds me of our Skylar Howard.
Yeah,
Skylar Howard
that's what he is.
The 2017 team that won double-digit games. So, we love Garrett Green, and like Rush said, it sucked doing that episode today, but I'm sure your guys' fan base loved Will Howard before.
Oh, yeah.
I know there's stuff at the end on how he went to Ohio State in some of the comments, but I like headed into last year. You guys love Will Howard. He won you a Big 12 title.
And at the same time, I was at the Colorado game this past weekend up in Boulder, and I'm checking my phone and seeing texts of, oh, Will Howard did it again.
Yeah.
Against Ohio or against Oregon in this past weekend. And when the clock ran out and it was 3rd and 20 or whatever, and he took it, that was just, I mean, I was having flashbacks to that Texas overtime game last year a little bit where it was
that's exactly what I said, Bob. When Will Howard can put up all the numbers in the world, and then when he gets to that lat and the clock's hit 0 and he's putting his hand on his head like this, he Will Howarded it.
It was so. I mean, we've seen this film play out multiple times already before, so I just knew he's gonna get them 10 wins this season. I told my Ohio State friends
that,
but my buddy Luke, he's like, well, I think he can get us more than that. I was like, well, I don't know about that, but get your hopes
a Will Howard show, by the way. This is the West Virginia.
This is a West Virginia preview, but with that.
Good.
On the rushing attack, so I do want to talk about that three-headed monster of we've talked about Green's versatility, his dual threat capability, but you've also got Jaheim White and CJ Donaldson. They both came into the season with a lot of praise, and they were looking to ride that momentum from last season. And you're coming into a year this year where you've already got a pretty stacked running back room in the Big 12, from guys like Ollie Gordon who haven't delivered to guys like DJ Giddens who have. But all that's to say, White and Donaldson have 398 and 378 yards on the ground, respectively. Each have 5 touchdowns apiece on the ground and 1 through the air each. So very evenly matched there. I feel like, maybe that's a running back room that's eating some snaps from each other kind of thing. Like, it's pretty evenly split, it seems like, between those two guys. But the team as a whole, averaging 210 rushing yards per game with that rushing attack across the board between those two guys and Garrett Green. But with that, K-State is 5th in the FBS in opponent rushing yards per game, allowing only 78.8 rushing yards through 6 games. A little bit deflated by the negative 29 rushing yards against Colorado last weekend, but a stat is still a stat. That said, how do you expect West Virginia to try to win in the rushing game against a really stout rushing defense? And Rush, to your point earlier, you just stuff the A gaps. And if that's K-State's game plan, you force Garrett Green to throw. What's going to happen with that?
So kind of going back to what I was saying earlier with the game plan and Neil Brown, is you kind of get a little concerned when something works. You brought up all those stats, and it is a very talented running back room and obviously a dual threat quarterback situation. I just don't think they're still utilizing them to the way that they're capable. It seems like CJ Donaldson will, run it up, the A gap, do pretty well, because that's kind of obviously he's not a fullback, but that's the guy that's going to, get some yards after contact. And the next thing you know, they have some east-west stuff going on, and, you go for -2 yards, and it's like, what is going on here? So while I do think Kansas State obviously is very talented on the defensive end and that it could be their game plan, I do think our running backs are talented enough where, sometimes there's just football plays. Your plan is to stop us. Our plan is to run right through you. May the best man win. And I think that can still favor our running backs, especially CJ Donaldson. And CJ Donaldson, yes, he's been very talented, someone that struggled with injuries. So there has been some questions there on the consistency standpoint, but I think he's been very decent. And I don't think they've utilized him enough. Now, that's not to take anything away from Jaheim White, because that's the more east-west runner, and he's a lot more dynamic and shifty, and he can hit the holes hard. But I still want him going through, the B gap rather than, doing an end around, because those don't work. The end around should be for Garrett Green. Seriously, like, it's just it's not working. So while I do say that is the game plan against West Virginia, but I mean it from the standpoint of, if it doesn't work right away, Neil Brown will get frustrated and then go back to a negative 4-yard screen pass or, something else there. But if he sticks with it and we stay consistent with it, I do think they will break through eventually. So that's the purpose of the game plan. But I do think our running backs are talented enough, to run right through the lines. I really do. And I don't think we're utilizing them correctly.
Ryan, anything to add to that?
No, I think Rush hit the nail on the head. Jaheim's really talented, but he's a sophomore, and I think he's still averaging 5.9 yards a carry, but a little bit, like I said, some of our stats are flawed from that FCS game being one of the 6 games. But I do think Jaheim is due for a breakout game. I would say he definitely is the highest upside. Donaldson's a converted running back, more of the power kind of a 3rd and short, 3rd and 1. He's the one that's going to get the ball to get those hard yards. But he does have the biggest workload so far this year, being 80 carries versus White with 68. Sorry. But I just think it's been a little bit of lack of consistency, a lack of commitment at time to stick with the running game for whatever reason. And it drives Russ and I insane just because when you're averaging 5.9 yards a carry, that's there's no reason to pass at that point. I mean, and until they go with 11 men in the box, and then you can beat them over the top. So for whatever, and your quarterback averages 5.9 yards a carry too. So it's really, they haven't been stopped all year from a rushing attack. They've stopped themselves to a certain degree with turnovers, falling behind, because when they go down 7-10 points, they tend to get away from that rushing attack because teams always get pass happy when you're just down a touchdown. So definitely a team that needs to play with the lead, even though the Pitt game clearly a 10-point lead with 3 minutes wasn't enough.
Sabotage from within. That's what I like to hear as a Kansas State fan, not so much as a West Virginia fan. But we got to get to this passing attack. I got some questions about my boy Cole Taylor. He's on my fantasy team that we're doing on the Cocaine Willie show, fantasy locks and all that stuff. Cole Taylor, he's got to be integral in this game, doesn't he? I mean, is he more as a tight end? Is he more of like the inline guy, or is he split out wide? Because it's been a while since I've actually sat down and really watched the West Virginia game, but his stats, I mean, he's doing his thing as a tight end. In my opinion, coming from the Kansas State perspective, our tight ends usually give us about 2 catches. They might be both for touchdowns, but they're not really that integral in the offense. Cole Taylor seems like it's a little different. Break down the receivers a little bit, and I really want to hear about Cole Taylor.
Yeah, so Cole Taylor is more of an inline guy. They have split him out from time to time, but he definitely plays closer to the offensive line. Another guy too, real quick, is someone that's gotten more involved. Originally was supposed to be a blocking tight end, but has caught some passes the past couple of games, Jalen Davis. So they do have 2 very talented tight ends that it's kind of weird. West Virginia, we've kind of alluded to it this episode. The stats, just from a purely observational standpoint, right? The stats tell one story, but then you ask a West Virginia fan, they'll tell you another story. Like I don't know how to explain it, but something doesn't line up. Yes, and we saw it in the Iowa State game, right? Cole Taylor gets involved, but then you think back on the game, and it's like, why didn't he have a bigger impact than he really did? It's very perplexing, and it's just something about the game plan, or maybe it's the fact that it's just the game plan's all over the place, and each week it feel like it should center around someone or a talent that we do, and it just goes everywhere. However, with that being said, to start the season, especially in our non-con play, Garrett Green, and you could see this, especially against Penn State. And of course, Penn State's an incredible team. They got dogs. They got NFL guys. We don't stack up against them like, other teams in the Big Ten would. But I felt like that game should have been a little closer. And like I was saying earlier, I think one of the reasons it seemed like at first that Garrett Green felt like he was doing too much was because he felt like he had to get it to too many guys. Right. Hudson Clement's his guy. Traylon Ray is another guy. Rodney Gallagher. Those are your 3 wide receivers right there. Yeah, we have Preston Fox, but he's more of a special teams. We brought in Justin Robinson to be kind of that Devin Carter type guy that we had last year. And, he had a decent catch against Oklahoma State. He's had a couple glimpses here. But those are our 3 guys, especially Hudson Clement. But going back to your point with you asking about Cole Taylor, is Cole Taylor needs to be treated like a wide receiver because he probably is Garrett Green's, I would say, second favorite receiver behind Hudson Clement. And I think what it comes down to is they have done better at getting it to the guys that have been more consistent, that are cleaner, and the guys that, I don't know, just feel like they have a better relationship with Garrett Green on the field. And he doesn't feel like he has to force to get it to anyone. But going back to what we're saying, I know what the stats say, but it just doesn't feel like they're utilizing Cole. Like, whatever the stats say, double. That's the amount that Cole Taylor should be getting. Seriously, because when you have a running game that's your strength, you have a dual threat quarterback. How isn't your tight end catching the ball or making some type of play every 3 plays? And it just, like I said, it just, we're in a place where the stats say one thing, but our observations and the way the game just plays out is just different. And I think that's just the best way to explain it.
I got the answer for you. Our offense doesn't make winning plays when the game's hard. You guys found this out when you went to Provo. You guys dominated them in the stats, but they got some crazy turnovers. They got a punt return that got deflected 17 times. They ran it back 95 yards. You could compare West Virginia and BYU stats right now, and you would think West Virginia was a 6-0 team and BYU was a 3-3 team. But one team wins the turnover margin week in and week out, makes timely plays. Like, you got to have a first down. They find a way to get it to Cole Taylor to extend a drive. Defensively, 3rd and 7, got to get a stop. Crowd's on its feet. Can't get off the field. There's some breakdown in coverage. Like, West Virginia just has struggled from a consistency standpoint. And that's why I thought it was actually kind of entertaining that you said that the passing attack was 12th, because when your eyes don't tell you that, but when you really look at the stats, they look good. Like, everybody's stats look good, but it's just when the game is competitive, for whatever reason, they just don't make the play. They don't make a competitive when the game's tight play, and I can't put my thumb on it other than that, and they lose the turnover battle week in and week out. So yeah, Cole Taylor is very important in this offense, especially when you're able to run the ball and you can leak him out in the flats and stuff. But yeah, they got to keep getting him more and more involved.
Yeah, and I think you said it perfectly. I mean, the ball's going to bounce one way or the other, and we've made a lot of Will Howard comparisons, but 2 years ago, Big 12 championship team for K-State, the ball bounced the right direction for the Cats that season for whatever reason. The next year, opposite thing happened. You lose a lot of close games. You just don't quite get over the hump, and seems like West Virginia's in a similar spot this year. I do want to move over to defense. So West Virginia ranks 66th overall in defensive efficiency. They're 38th against the rushing game and 105th when teams drop back to pass, which is fascinating. That puts them last place in the Big 12, 16 out of 16 teams in the Big 12 in EPA per play against the pass, and they allow around 142 yards per game on the ground, 235 yards through the air. So what would you say have been the situations or types of schemes or personnel where West Virginia's defense has shined this year? And I'm looking in particular at that game against Oklahoma State, where West Virginia held them to 14 points, and we could have a whole different podcast just diagnosing what's wrong with Oklahoma State right now, and Alan Bowman and the lack of use of Ollie Gordon, or just teams knowing what they're going to throw at them with that. But when we look at that game, when we look at the situations where the defense has done well, what are those situations? What types of schemes or personnel are the offensives throwing at you where you're able to eat against those offenses?
So one major thing that they did that really helped is moving Jordan Leslie, our defensive coordinator, up to the box. And I think that was against Kansas, Ryan. After the Pitt game, they decided to do that, and things got a lot better defensively. Yeah. I'll keep this pretty simple because I think it's actually I know where you're getting at, but I do think it's actually a simple answer. We have, and this was one of my concerns to start the season, but ended up being backwards. Our pass rush is really good. Our defensive line, our just trenches on both sides of the ball do really well. And you saw it in that Oklahoma State game that you brought up. They couldn't get anything going. And so having, our it doesn't matter the scheme. As long as you're setting up our defensive line to being able to eat, they'll eat. Linebacking core on the other end is it's not bad. They're young, they're athletic, they make mistakes, but then they also make really good plays at the same time. They're not the issue. The issue lies with this team is the secondary. And while they have gotten better from what it's been with Jordan Leslie moving up in the box, I think where they get really frustrated, I think the issue with them is we don't have a Beanie Bishop like we did last year. Beanie Bishop, and he's now playing for the Steelers, and he's doing pretty well. He's earned his playing time there. We don't have that dog. We don't have that leader on the secondary front. It was supposed to be Aubrey Burks this year. He's dealt with a little bit of injuries, but it's also been like, where has he been? Even when he's been healthy. And it's kind of in a situation where I feel like everyone in the secondary is like, who's going to step up and make a play instead of being like, I'm going to step up and make a play. And I think what was really frustrating in the Iowa State game, where the defense actually played somewhat decent. I don't put a lot of the blame in that loss on the defense. However, there was one, I think it was the second touchdown that they scored where they just blew. No one knew who was covering who, and the coverage was completely blown. And obviously that can't be done, but it happens. Okay, you learn, mistakes happen. You're not going to lose a game because of one blown coverage. You can make up for that. The issue was, it seemed like every third down, Iowa State would be 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, which is, most teams would take that. 3rd, 5, 3rd and 6. Okay. And they would run these 6-7 yard outs to the sideline, and they would get it every freaking time. And no adjustments would be made to prevent that. No cornerback was stepping up to get in the way. It's like they would keep letting it happen. And I think that's where the issue lies in this defense. And that's where it gets a lot of, just under the skin of some of our fans. It's like they just kind of let these things happen. And I don't know if they think like, oh, a receiver's going to catch it and we'll pop it out or we'll push him out of bounds. But they have an issue of letting it's like they either are extreme one way or the other. Either we're going to play him tight and guys are going to blow right past us, or, hey, we'll put him in front of us. But either way, they make a catch and they either convert a first down or it's like, they can't find this middle ground. And that's where it gets very frustrating is our secondary. No one's stepping up to make a play.
We need to play Howland Bowman again. He's Oklahoma State's struggles are unreal, to be honest, just with what they were able to do last year. But I would say, man, to echo what Rush said, the front's been good. You just look at PFF, Jackson, Bradley, Mulba, they all grade out well. It's a secondary, a lot of transfers, and it just has not meshed as a group. Timely football has not been this unit's strength. I mean, everybody saw how the Pitt game ended. You're up 10 with 3 minutes left. You have a 97, 98% win percentage. They're at like the 50 down 10. It's like, all right, just keep it in front. Somehow you get beat over the top. And then it's like, oh crap. Now all of a sudden we got to get a first down to win the game. Go 3 and out. They go right back down again. So, and you know what was ironic about the game? We had shut them down for like 2.5 quarters defensively. This unit, for whatever reason, will play 2 really good quarters of football, even 2.5. But in Iowa State on Saturday night, came out, completely shut down Rocco Becht in their unit. But whenever there's a mistake on the offensive end, and it's like, and this has been my theme, is we don't make the winning plays when they're the momentum changing plays. We have a bad play offensively. Garrett Green throws an interception. We have a fumble, turned over on down, whatever happened. 3 and out punt. All right, we got to get a stop. We got to stop the bleeding. That's when the big play happens, and it just spirals. And for whatever reason, this unit just has lacked consistency. Rush is right. They've gotten better, but not well enough to win big games. And that's just been the story of the season, both ends, where some good things, but just not good enough to beat really good teams, and that's why we beat the bad teams and lose to any team that has some substance to it.
Well, hopefully that favors K-State in this one, but I mean,
I'm
what
hoping
you're
we're due.
yeah,
No kidding.
that always seems like it is. That whatever the stats are telling you, that it's gonna change up somehow. But I want to take you back to 08. That's when I'm graduating high school, my senior year of high school, and our defensive coordinator on our football team said, "I've got a crazy idea. We're gonna run a 3-3-5 like the West Virginia Mountaineers were doing." You were probably, I don't remember anybody running this defense back in 2008. And you guys, are you still running that defense? Because everybody in the Big 12 seems to have taken over that. And you've got to have a strong front to be able to do that, to hold up in the run game and get those linebackers able to fill the gaps. I want you to talk about what this defensive scheme is doing now, if you're still running that 3-3-5, and how is that defensive front enabling you guys to be so good against the run?
So no, it seems like we're running more 4 down linemen, and then we're using kind of a hybrid with our linebackers, that especially the outside ones, that like Bradley is fantastic. That guy can pass rush, or he can, drop back and be a linebacker. So a lot of these hybrid positions, we do use a spear at times, but that's changed too with Aubrey Burks being hurt. That has been kind of a thing too. We've dealt, especially in that Kansas game, we got a lot of banged up secondary after that. So our scheme has kind of changed game by game. But here's what I'll say, from the positive end of our defense, right? Is I'm someone who believes that a good to great secondary cannot overcome a bad defensive line, right? Because if there's no pass rush, eventually a wide receiver is going to get open. No matter how great of a defensive back you are, eventually it does favor the offense, right? But a bad secondary can, be helped out by a great defensive line, or at least a good defensive line. Because if you get to the quarterback, even if a guy's wide open and the, defensive line's coming in, you're not going to get him there. So I do think that is a strength to West Virginia. Is we have been doing a good job of getting pressure to the quarterback. Been doing okay. Like you brought up Bob with the run game stat. I mean, we're doing okay defending the run. It's just, it comes down to, like, it's weird. It's offense and defense. They have the same problem, different schemes, different personnel. That's fine. But it goes back to everything Ryan was saying. It's just winning plays. It's our secondary just can't make a winning play. It's been frustrating. And it's like I said before, they're either letting guys catch it in front of them or behind them, but we're not seeing a lot of pass breakups. And that's frustrating because defensive line can't get to the quarterback every time.
Which is basically back to my point where they'll look good. They'll look dominant as a unit for half the game, where that defensive line's getting home. But then, I mean, they can only get home so many times throughout a game. You got to cover somebody. You got to have a little bit of pride in your position and say, hey, man, the game's on the line, or 3rd and 10. We got to get off the field and keep the momentum, or get this momentum back. And somehow, some way, there's a breakdown in coverage. So, yeah, it's more of that 4-2-5. But yeah, they're still playing with it. They're trying to find their identity. They don't really. They have a good group up front, but that group up front can only be so good if we can't cover anybody. So they're still trying to find their identity on that side of the ball. Offensively, you guys know what the identity is: run the ball.
Totally. And just to go back to kind of the stat sheet, when I was looking at it, what really stood out to me, and it kind of echoes what you've already mentioned, but you had the defensive line. They seem to be kind of A1, like definitely the best position group on defense. And then you go down to linebackers, and they're better, but not as good as the D line. And then the DBs, there's one interception all year so far within that DB group specifically. And they're supposed to be the ones who are the ball hawks. It's great if you have a linebacker or nickel corner or someone who can go in and get the ball, break up some passes, but you want your DBs going up head to head, matching up with those wide receivers and going out and getting the ball. And the guy that got that interception was Jaheim Joseph at safety.
Mm-hmm.
Got Anthony Wilson as well is leading that specific position group in total tackles. I think he's second on the defensive unit. But I mean, the big picture when we look at this matchup and when you look at what West Virginia has or hasn't done all season, they're 110th in turnover margin per game. They're averaging nearly 2 giveaways per game and 1 takeaway a game, and are 127th out of 133, 134 FBS teams in interceptions thrown per game as well. So kind of zooming out, how much of a role do you think turnover margin is going to play? And how much of that do you think is on Garrett Green as the quarterback versus the DB is just not stepping up and making plays, kind of like you guys were saying?
I mean, I think it's everything. I mean, even in that pick game, we've dropped a lot of interceptions. That pick game, we dropped a pick 6 early in that game that it didn't even have to come down to the end of the game.
Would have won up 14-0.
Yeah, exactly. It's that's what you're right. It's both. Both sides aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's basically as simple as that.
Yeah, and Garrett Green's got to be a lot better. I mean, he had 4 interceptions the whole year last year. To have 6, including one of those games being an FCS game, like I said, and Kansas and Oklahoma State defensively have been just atrocious so far this year. Like, it's not like, yeah, I get Penn State's really good, but it's not like we played a murderer's row in terms of defenses that we've faced. So that's been disappointing, and one of the reasons why we even had that discussion. He's got to take care of the ball. I mean, he's a senior. You're supposed to dominate the turnover margin. And then our guys, man, it's just Penn State got to have a pick off your helmet. The pick game, drop a pick 6, you're up 14-0. You'll probably blow out Pitt, and it's never a game, and you play with fate, and then you lose. Iowa State, I mean, they dropped an interception or 2 as well, and then Iowa State caught the interceptions. Get a drive going, Garrett throws one in the red zone, changes the momentum, and boom. Jailbreak going the other way.
And real quick, before we get into some of the score predictions, Chef, I'm calling the audible here real quick because we've got some good comments. We've got 316 people watching this live right now. Nice. So shout out to you guys who are watching this on Twitter, YouTube, on our channel, or on Ryan and Rush's channel. If you're not following us, give us a follow. If you're not following Ryan and Rush, give them both a follow as well. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube, all that good stuff. But just real quick, so we've got Miller Hendricks popping in the chat on YouTube saying, let's not kid ourselves. We all know the West Virginia man who struck fear into our veins was Tavon Austin.
Oh, yeah.
Cannot reiterate that enough.
Stud.
Best high school highlight tape I've ever seen in my life.
People say that.
No, we've got Jor. We've got Jor popping in here. He said Pat White, Steve Slayton, Owen Schmidt, Darius Renaud, with Pat McAfee as the punter is the West Virginia I grew up on, and that was a fire era.
Same.
And then really quick, I also want to give a shout out to David Talks Buffs, the newest member of the College Huddle, by the way. He was our Colorado guest last week. Says, well, look who the Cats dragged in. Probably a must-win game for both teams to stay in the title race. Looking forward to this game. Could not agree more with that. I mean, I guess for real quick before we get into score predictions, do you feel like West Virginia is still in the title race for the Big 12 championship?
Absolutely. That's why it's so frustrating of his comments this week. It's like, we should be focused on beating K-State, who was a preseason favorite to win the league. And if you win this, you're 3-1, just like you guys. If you win this, you're 3-1, and probably has the inside track to Dallas coming down the stretch.
I love it.
I mean, I got one question before we get to these score predictions, because I'm really interested to see what you guys are thinking and how this game's going to play out. But I want to really get, because I caught a nightmare scenario in my head when you said the lone interception from West Virginia DB was Jaheim Joseph. Is he related to Carl Joseph? Because if he is, I'm shivering.
I don't think so.
No.
He was a Northwestern transfer. He
Okay.
came over with Garnett Hollis.
I was like, if
year.
he's a freaking cousin of Carl Joseph, because that dude used to lay wood for West Virginia, and I hated having to play them because I knew somebody was going to get knocked out.
He was a baller. He was playing when we were students here, so he was always a blast to watch. Didn't worry about the secondary when he was back there. I'll tell you that.
That's facts. So let's get into score predictions. if you want me to go first, Bob, it's whatever you're thinking. I think it's going to be an insane tight one. And I think these defenses, we don't necessarily pass the ball all that well. We're getting a little bit better. I think Avery is starting to get into his own. People have been, trying to figure out what's been happening with Avery from that injury that he had at West Virginia, versus Colorado, the non-contact. I think he's been sick. I think was a little dehydrated. I think he's going to be back to full strength. I don't know how much we're going to run him anymore. So I think his arm is going to be the difference. I've got it 28-24 Cats in Morgantown. Let's make it 3 straight.
Ryan and Rush, hit us with your score predictions.
You want to go, Rush?
34-31. I think it's going to be close. And Ryan and I have been talking about it all week. This is let's get our 4th ranked win under the Neil Brown era. Let's trust the climb, baby. Get us back on track. Here we go. Let's do it. Let's start it from the top. We've been here before. 34-31. It's going to be a good game though. It's going to be close. Weird things happen in Morgantown.
This is the Neil Brown era in a nutshell. Just when you're out, he pulls off a big one, reels you right back in. I think the Mountaineers get it done on a walk-off field goal, 30-27. It'll be our 5th game of having a spread 3 or smaller, and every game from here on out, outside of a couple home games where we'll be favored, every line will be 3 or less. So I think the Mountaineers finally get on the right side of one because everybody's out on them. 30-27. They beat the Cats.
Oh man. I'm going to go with the Cats in this one. I'm going to go 33-21, but I think this is going to be more similar to K-State's game against Texas Tech last year, where K-State and Tech, it was a battle. Tech had the lead for a good chunk of that first half, and K-State pulls away later in the game in the second half. I think after the scare that K-State had this past weekend in Boulder, I think that they're going to know how to make adjustments heading into the second half. They're going to get scared earlier in the game. And based on what a lot of you guys have said so far and watching West Virginia this year, it seems like those first halves are where West Virginia is really keeping it competitive. In the second half, for whatever reason, some of the wheels start to fall off here or there. And matchup-wise, I do like K-State in this game matchup-wise in comparison to a lot of the games we've had so far. I think, with it, if we're making Garrett Green one-dimensional, I feel relatively good about that. Relatively good. Not great, but relatively good.
I'm debating whether I want to go to this game. I love going down to I think I should.
That's right. You're just in Columbus, right?
Yeah. I might
Well,
travel that little
go.
that 3-hour, just slide down and just get in there, but I don't know. I don't like going to
tickets
these
aren't
games.
expensive.
Oh, no. I was going to say that when you said that at the beginning of the episode.
Neil just wants you to have a good
I'll
time.
be there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeff, seriously, if you end up coming, let me know.
The weather's gonna be good if you didn't know already.
I'll be in the DMs if I do decide to go down there.
Hey, it'll be a fun time.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
They could not have asked for a better scheduling spot, the Mountaineers. The fact that K-State just played in Boulder at 3 a.m. that game ended. I watched that entire game. Unbelievable. And then we're playing at home again. So you guys won a coin flip game in Boulder. We lost a coin flip game in Morgantown. If we can't win this one, man, I don't know how many more coin flips we're going to get.
Yeah, in terms of scheduling, this is probably at the beginning, everybody was doing the scheduling breakdown. This was the nightmare scenario. You had Prime Time versus
Sunflower
Coach
next,
Prime.
Right?
Yes, Sunflower Showdown next.
Classic
rivalry. This is,
spot.
let down, look ahead. So,
If
we do this game, if K-State wins this game, the sky's the limit, in my opinion.
I agree. And yeah, to your point, Ryan, I live in Lakewood, Colorado. It's 50 minutes south of Boulder. I got home at about 2:30 a.m. Mountain Time after that game, and after getting hit by Colorado fans with cocktails and they were throwing trash on the field. It was absolutely disgusting. But with that, we're done. Yeah. With that, thanks again a ton for the both of you coming on. We appreciate having you on. Let the Cokeheads know where they can find you, and we'll give you all the final words so you can share whatever else you want to share or plug.
Yeah, at Ryan and Rush Show on YouTube and Twitter. He's at Moneyline_Mac. I'm at Rambling Rush on Twitter as well. Check us out. We do have a new format for our show too. 10 minutes or less is we want to try to give you guys all the information as quick as you can. Hey, when you have your when you're sitting on the John, just play us. It's about 10 minutes, right? So there you go. Trying to make it easy and convenient and give you the full rundown as we can. We know everyone's busy. We know that there's a lot of platforms out there, and we appreciate all the support. And hey, guys, thank you so much for having us on. We love the show and always enjoy talking with you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
ahead,
it. Yeah, appreciate it, guys. At Moneyline_Mac, he's at Rambling Rush, Ryan and Rush, and then we also do the college experience as well. And Chef, I know you tune into that one. College hoops is right around the corner. Jerome Tang and company going to have a good year as well. Coach DeVries. So we'll get together this basketball season, and Neil Brown's cycle continues. Just when everybody thinks we're out, they reel us right back in. Let's go.
I would love nothing more than to chat hoops with you guys, but that's going to do it for us today. Once again, shout out to our sponsors, Pat's Beef Jerky and Annie Mae's Parlor. Remember to visit patsbeefjerky.com. Use the promo code CATS, get 10% off of your next order. And we are the K-State representative on the College Huddle, along with Ryan and Rush are the West Virginia representatives on the College Huddle, the largest community of fan-driven content in America. So check them out at thecollegehuddle.com and follow them on social media at College Huddle. Last but not least, you can follow our show at Cocaine Willie on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, or Instagram, or you can follow us individually. I'm at Bob Trollsby. Chef is at Chef Andre Napier, and Fireball Nat is overseas. Chef.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug, baby.
We are all coke and no joke. Wildcat country.
Let's freaking ride, dude.
Let's ride.
Yeah. Oh.